Hi guys, good evening. Thank you very much for joining me this evening, guys. This side actually the sun is setting, and I thought to myself, so why not end this Monday on a high note? And I know we've been tackling a series on loss and grief, and before I even get to that, guys, thank you very much for the support. Thank you very much for the love that you have shown me and this great family. You guys are just the best. Guess what? We are actually at 98 subscribers. Yes, 98. And I am so grateful to you people and to God, because if it were not for you, we would not have made it this far. Thank you very much, and thanks to God for just making this possible. I cannot thank you people enough. Receive my love and my appreciation. And so we're almost coming to a close. The topic that we began on loss and grief, we're almost actually coming to a close, and we'll be ending it in the next, like, I think we only have one more session to go. Only one more session to go. So for those who probably have been wondering, hey, this Susan, this girl is always talking about loss and grief. Please don't go telling people, do you know that channel where there's this beautiful girl who's always talking about matters loss and grief? Not at all. We're almost coming to a close, but you know, when you start a series, it's important to also complete it, so that for someone that is going through that and they've been following, you don't leave them hanging, and so they're able to actually get help. And so that is what we actually did. And today, you remember earlier I had actually mentioned about whatever it is that I was experiencing after losing a friend of mine, actually a friend and a colleague. And I remember telling you guys that I suffered insomnia for quite a number of days. Hey guys, when I just thought I was actually recovering, kumbe I was wrong. Do you know, sometime last week I got a very bad emotional breakdown, actually 2 days in a row, and it was actually in one of the worst places that you don't want to even imagine. We were having workshops with clients, and we had actually begun a training for quite a number of days. And do you know, someone just mentioned something one of those days, and it triggered those things and the thoughts that I didn't want to think about, and it triggered all those negative emotions. And I ended up remembering the loss of my friend. It became very overwhelming. I remember I even got emotional. Thank God not everyone noticed, just my colleague who noticed, and he was like, what's up, what is not happening, you know? And I had to really rush and leave the room and go to the washroom, and I cried, guys. I cried. I think even crying is an understatement. I actually sobbed. Have you ever sobbed so hard hadi unajifungia mdomo, so that someone who's getting into the washroom, they don't get to hear that there's someone crying? And it was so bad. I cried. And you know what, I had to somehow compose myself, and I was like, Susan, you got this. Have you even looked at yourself in the mirror, and you're just talking to yourself, addressing you? And I had to do that. I talked to myself. I was like, Susan, you got this, you can handle it, stop crying, it's okay, it is okay. So I finally gathered up myself, went back to the training, and now the following day someone again just opens up the Pandora's box, and they end up saying, Susan, by the way, just curious, I was actually wondering why yesterday you said that you were not very okay. Actually, that's how I described how I was feeling, and I said, I'm not very okay today. My emotions are just I just said that's what I avoid really discussing the details, because somehow I knew I was not okay, and getting into the details would get me very emotional. So someone now ended up asking me, but I was just curious, why did you say what you said yesterday, and why did you describe how you were feeling the way you did? And so now I had to explain, and I had to tell them that I was actually going through a mourning season, or rather it's a mourning grieving season. I had lost a colleague of mine, and as soon as I started that story, it opened up the Pandora's box, and whatever it is that I didn't want to think about and remember again came full force. And I remember my colleague looking at me and going like, Susan, don't cry, don't start crying, Susan, don't start crying. And by the time he's saying that, I'm just like, you know. And I remember, that day actually, it was now bad. I actually ended up breaking down. I couldn't even handle the facilitation anymore, so my colleague had to take it up from there. And why am I sharing these things? Probably someone has been seeing me doing these recordings, and they're thinking, this girl is very strong. She mentioned that she's going through loss and grief, and she appears to be very energetic, very happy every day. No, guys, these are now the good days. When you see me doing the recordings, it's when I'm feeling much better, it's when I'm feeling okay. But I'm also having those moments where I'm not feeling okay. And so that brings us to today's topic. Yes, we already tackled what loss and grief is. We already tackled the myths around loss and grief. We also tackled what you should say to people, what you should not say to people. And so today we're just looking at the symptoms of grief. What are the signs and the symptoms of grief? And guys, did I even mention to you guys that during those 2 days when I had that emotional breakdown, I was actually even having a stomach upset. Imagine, I was actually diarrheaing. In my mind, I'm really left wondering. I was actually thinking, what is not happening to my tummy? What did I eat? Like, what did I consume? And the last time I checked, actually, I've always been eating home foods, and home food, of course, is freshly cooked, and hygiene is also maintained. And so I was just wondering, I've not eaten anything that is contaminated, so what exactly is going on? And little did I know that it was just my body reacting to whatever it is that I was going through. And now later is when I actually came to understand that. And so probably the people who are going through a lot of symptoms and they're just left wondering why it is not happening, why am I feeling this way, and you just don't understand. Now this session is actually for you, just to help you put into perspective the symptoms that you might experience when you're undergoing loss and grief. And so we have the physical symptoms. Remember, we said that loss and the grieving process is very unique to each individual. You cannot compare yourself to another person, and you don't have to necessarily experience all these symptoms, but you might experience some of them. So if someone else is experiencing insomnia, diarrhea, but I was also very irritable, also experiencing depression and extreme sorrow and sadness, you don't have to experience that. So it's important for us to understand that. And so now, when you go to the emotional symptoms, there are people who actually experience numbness and detachment at that particular time when they receive the news concerning the loss. So they experience numbness and detachment. Someone is just numb, and then they are detached from the environment. They just seem to be in their own world. They are not in touch with reality, and that is actually very normal. There are some also who experience shock and disbelief. Right after the loss, it is difficult for someone to process it, to even just come to terms with whatever it is that happened. And so they have trouble believing. They're actually in denial. And, they're like, no, this cannot be happening. No, not my son. No, it's not me. I cannot have lost my job. Not my relationship, not my marriage. They're actually at a place where they're in denial. There are others who you also, in fact, when it comes to that part of the denial, have you ever heard of people even commenting and saying, but yesterday I actually saw the deceased seated where they used to sit, or someone just says, I had the baby crying, I had the baby calling out my name. All those are just some of the signs and the symptoms that one experiences when they're going through the denial and disbelief. And then we also have sadness, and it's not just sadness, guys, it's profound sadness, where someone feels so low and so sad. I can actually call it so low. Oh my god. Oh my god, sorry for that. Yes, it's solo manenos, you know what I'm talking about. So extreme sorrow. There are others who experience feelings of emptiness and despair. They feel very lonely, they feel hopeless, and they're just at a state of depression. And that is actually very, very normal and okay. Someone might find themselves crying a lot, that no one can even console them. They're just crying and crying and crying uncontrollably. That is actually very okay. And then you also have guilt and regret. Have you ever heard of people saying, I regret, I wish I told this person I loved them enough. I wish I told this person enough how much I loved them. Others, you find them saying, I wish I didn't let my son walk out of that door that day, because why they didn't know that probably the son was to go and get involved in an accident that would actually take away that would actually take away his life. And so someone probably says, I wish, or I regret allowing my son to walk out of that door. You might hear someone else saying, I feel guilty for just not being there for this person when they were alive, or not doing my best in that particular situation. And remember, when they're saying that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't do their best. They could have done their best, but during that moment they just feel like they would have done more and that's what you're talking about, the guilt and the regret. There's also a lot of fear and anxiety, extreme actually. Even in the face of loss, someone actually has a lot of anxiety and fear of the unknown. They're uncertain about the future. They don't know how life is going to be going forward without this person in the picture. They don't know, after losing their job, how they are even going to survive. And so all these things bring a lot of anxiety. There are other people actually who even end up just fearing for themselves, fearing that they might end up losing the other child or end up losing the other parent, and that is actually very normal. Then you also have people who experience extreme loneliness and isolation. They just withdraw from people. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to interact with others. They don't want to be around people. They just want to be alone. They just want to be alone. And the others who just feel lonely, even when they have people around them, they're feeling this extreme loneliness that no one can actually understand. Okay. And then you also have people who experience a lot of anger and frustration. Anger, they're angry at the deceased, they're angry at themselves, they're angry at God. Have you ever experienced people saying, I'm really angry, I'm mad at myself, I'm so angry at myself, why did I do this? Others are angry at God, and they're like, God, why did you allow this to happen to me? There are others who you actually find are even angry at the disease. They're like, why couldn't you hold on a bit longer? Why did you have to leave me at this particular time when I needed you most? Why couldn't you have fought a bit more? That is actually the anger and the frustration. So when you go to the physical, you'll find that people who actually experience difficulties or other appetite changes. So they have difficulties in eating, so they end up either under eating or overeating. That is actually very normal. Others experience weight loss or weight gain during that period. There are others who even experience chest pain and tightness, and for most people they end up confusing this with thinking that they're almost getting a heart attack. Not at all. You find sometimes it's just the body reacting to the loss that they've actually experienced. The others who even experience digestive issues. You remember I told you guys, like for me, I experienced diarrhea. Guys, I diarrheaed from here. I drove from here to Mombasa. It's not a joke. By the way, it was so bad, and I just had the stomach upset all through. I had stomach upset, and I was just wondering, why am I feeling so funny? My tongue was not just okay, and I really diarrheaed. And so the others who experience nausea or even stomach pains. Others experience even body aches and pains. There are others who experience even lowered immunity. You can imagine, with not sleeping enough, not sleeping well, not feeding well, automatically your immunity is also compromised. Others experience insomnia, that is lack of sleep, or which for me experienced that. Others even experience they end up sleeping too much. They just want to sleep. They don't want to wake up. They don't want to wake up and get their daily activities running, and that is actually very normal and very okay. And then we also have people who experience fatigue, and it's extreme fatigue. They feel so tired. They're just so tired, and they've not even done anything tedious, but they just feel so tired. They're not able to even undertake their day-to-day duties. Okay. Then we also have psychological signs and symptoms. There are people who experience a lot of psychological distress. Others experience a lot of confusion, and someone is not just in their right state of mind at that particular time. They feel like there are some you even find confusing probably people. Others you find themselves confusing the dates and the days. They just seem to be in a trance of some sort. Okay. And then difficulty concentrating. Like for me, I actually experienced that after receiving the news for quite a couple of days. I couldn't even concentrate at work. So difficulty concentrating, they're just not able to focus and do whatever it is that they're supposed to do on a day-to-day basis. You find some others actually experiencing depression. Yes, depression, where they feel hopeless, they lose even the drive of just waking up every morning to attend to their day-to-day activities. They have problems in sleeping. They experience suicidal ideations, and someone just feels like they just want to die. They want to take away their life. They just want to leave this world. They just want to die. Others experience anxiety attacks. Yes, very severe anxiety attacks. And remember what I mentioned earlier, the chest pains. You know, it comes and you experience this chest pain and tightness. It almost feels like a heart attack. And actually, anxiety attack also has similar symptoms to heart attack, because one has difficulties in breathing, one experiences the chest tightness, like I've said, extreme fatigue, extreme sweating at that particular moment, and all these are signs and symptoms of grief. And probably if it's a child, I don't know, let's say a child or even a grown-up, for some they also experience separation anxiety. So you find if it's a child and maybe they've lost a parent, they don't want to be separated from the other parent. When they just see the parent either disappearing from the vicinity, they start crying, and they just want to be with them at that particular moment and stay with them all through. The others who even don't want to leave their loved ones. Probably if someone lost a child, they don't want to leave this other child. They just want to be around, hang around, be with them. Why? Because they're experiencing some sort of separation anxiety. And so all these are symptoms and signs of grief. And if you're experiencing any of this, I want you to understand that it is very normal to experience and undergo these things. And the best thing that one can do is just allow themselves to go through this and just know how to cope. And we'll be able to tackle that in our next session. We'll be able to look at how to cope with grief and what exactly one needs to do to be able to cope with it effectively. So thank you very much, guys, for joining me, and have a lovely evening. Goodbye.